Good morning, church. This is Pastor Charlie, and we're in First Thessalonians. We're in chapter 2. Just to recap kind of where we've been in chapter 2 from verses 1 down to verse 4. Paul has just said that the people that have come to minister at Thessalonica, were approved by God to be entrusted with the gospel because God has tested their hearts, finding in them that they are trying to please God, not men. Now, this approval that God has is an approval that is placed on one who trusts in the gospel of God and the power of God in the gospel. How did you get that, Pastor Charlie? Well, if you backed up to verse 2, it says, "We had boldness in our God to declare to you the gospel of God in the midst of much conflict." The gospel empowered by the Holy Spirit is what Paul is looking at as the approval that men who proclaim the gospel to please God and not men receive. And so that's kind of the context of where we are. Paul is defending his apostolic authority and his ability to minister the gospel and the truthfulness of his ministry in the gospel. And now, in picking up at verse 5, he says this, "For we never came to you in words of flattery, as you know, nor with a pretext for greed. God is witness. Nor did we seek glory from people, whether from you or from others, though we could have made demands as apostles of Christ. But we were gentle among you, like nursing mothers taking care of her own children. So, being affectionately desirous of you, we were ready to share with you not only the gospel of God, but also our own selves, because you had become very dear to us." So Paul here is, again, he's being attacked. It's probably by the people that ran them out of Thessalonica, the same Jews that went up and ran them out of the next town that they were in. But he's defending himself against accusations. And he's saying, we never came to you using words of flattery. We weren't trying to flatter you. And you know that. Paul probably knows, telling them, you know that because we called you sinners who needed to be saved. You were unrighteous and you needed a righteousness that was not your own. And that's not a very flattering thing to say. And so he calls them to remember, we didn't come to you with flattering, nor with a pretext for greed. We didn't want your money. And God is a witness that we didn't want your money. We were there to minister to you. He's going to go on later in the letter and say we worked night and day not to be a burden to you. Nor did we seek glory from people, whether from you or from others. We didn't seek glory from you. We didn't want you to honor us. We didn't want you to look at us as being above you. Although, he says, we could have made demands because we're apostles of Christ. We're sent ones. We've been sent by Christ with a message. Now, he's probably not using apostle here in the technical sense. He's using it as a sent one sent by Christ to declare the gospel. Church, you and I are sent ones, for we have been sent into the world to make disciples, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. And so he's probably using the term in this way, that they were sent, because he's using it of himself, he's using it of Silvanus, he's using it of Timothy and his ministry group. He's not just using it for himself. And so he says, we could have made demands on you as those who have been sent into a community of unbelievers to proclaim the gospel of Christ. And we could have used that authority, but we did not. We didn't want you to honor us that way. We were gentle among you, like nursing mothers taking care of her children. He puts this in the most gentle kind of relationships. You know how a mother nurses a newborn babe. This is how Paul is describing the ministers that came to Thessalonica with the Thessalonians. We were gentle among you. And then he says, so being affectionately desirous of you, we were ready to share with you not only the gospel of God. We didn't want to just share the gospel and have you get saved, which is a great thing. They wanted that, but they wanted more than that. He said, but also our own selves, because you have become very dear to us. We wanted to share with you the gospel, and in sharing with you the gospel, we poured out our very hearts to you. Now, church, that's not unique to Paul. That's unique to the children of God. The true children of God who are declaring the gospel of God, expecting the power of God to change people. Those who have been entrusted because they've been approved, not to please men, but to please God. They pour their lives out for people. And they do it in a way that is not demanding. It's not on a pretext. It's not to gain money. It is because they love people, because they love their God. And so Paul is defending his ministry in Thessalonica against those who would criticize him, against those who would come against him and say, he was after your money, he was just wanting power over you, and he was lying, he was being deceitful, those kinds of things. And Paul's like, I didn't flatter you, I didn't take your money, and I wasn't necessarily looking to please you to get you to the gospel. My concentration with you was the gospel of God, and I would pour out my life to get you the gospel. Church, we need to realign our focuses. How many of us can say, I'm willing to pour my life out for unbelievers so that I can get them the gospel of God? I pray that we will turn into these types of Christians in these days. I'll talk to you tomorrow, church. Have a great day.